From when I was very young, around 5 years old, I felt like I was limited in what I could do in life as a girl or as a woman.
By the time I was about 13, I was starting to feel really depressed. I started self-harming. I started developing an eating disorder. I was introduced to a belief system. If you don't fit in, that's a sign that you're trans. If you don't like your body, then that's a sign that you're trans. And if you transition, all of these problems will be fixed.
When I was 22, I started injecting testosterone into my body so that I could medically transition from female to male.
Pretty much as soon as I turned 18, I made an appointment. I went to Planned Parenthood. One appointment took about an hour.
I called Planned Parenthood. We had about a 30-minute phone conversation, and then I was prescribed testosterone over the phone.
I was saying stuff like, oh, I think that I'm gonna be so much happier after I transition. Like, I'm really depressed now and I'm suicidal, but everything's gonna be so much better after I transition.
I have to say there was a small, like, underlying anxiety, like, beneath the excitement that was like a fear that I might be doing something wrong.
My life just became like a total disaster.
And then right after the surgery, I had been hit with these like awful feelings of having made like a huge mistake, like undeniable, just like, oh no, like what have I done? You know, I was like looking down at my body and seeing like this, like these like weeping gashes on my chest and just having like the most awful feeling.
Every year we don't stop this. How many hundreds or thousands of young girls like me, like some of you, how many of them are going to weep at the chance to have their newly lumpy chests flattened out again by mastectomies before they stop being sore?
I was thinking about that and realizing like I don't really feel better.
It just finally hit me that like, oh my God, like this has all been a mistake, everything.
I also don't really feel like a man. I just feel like a woman who has had her breasts cut off.
It wasn't enough for me to just like detransition and get on with my life. I really wanted to understand what went on, what happened to me, and I wanted to understand what was going on in the world.
We do our girls a disservice when we lie to them and tell them they don't have to be women. We tell them they can be anything they want to be, but we have forgotten to tell them to love being who they are.
I wanted people to know that there is life after detransition, even if you've made serious physical changes.
Woman, women, mother, mum, girls, daughter. To those people, the peddlers of transgender ideology, these are not your words to give away.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me on your show.
My honor and my pleasure, J. Lahl.
J. Mama Lahl.
J. Mama Lahl. So you've changed the name of the film that you've made. So could you give us the name of the film? So
The Detransition Diaries.
Okay.
And the tagline is Saving Our Sisters.
Okay. Yeah.
You're going to make the Saving Our Brothers movie.
I'm working on it. The Bros are kind of a different story. Yeah,
well, maybe you can enlighten me.
Well, there's a lot of different vectors, of course. The cohort that you're studying in your film, did you add a fourth person in your film? There's Kat Caddison, Helena Kirshner, and
Grace.
The lovely Grace. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I tried to pin another one down, but it just didn't happen.
And they are all roughly the same age and have roughly a similar trajectory into trans identification.
Yes. Yes. It was, kind of, some of them had a little early trauma. All of them had, awkwardness about their bodies. Mm-hmm. A couple of them spent way too much time on the internet, Tumblr, the influence of all that. A lot of them just, once they were thought this is what they wanted, everybody just happily affirmed, gave them all kinds of treatments and therapies over the phone. the usual, medical negligence and recklessness.
So between this film and a previous film that you did was about surrogacy.
No, before that was Transmission. What's the rush to reassign gender?
Yeah.
That was a year ago.
Yeah.
So Detransition Diaries is my 9th film.
Oh, okay. But before the rush to transition or transmission, the rush to transmission, there was
egg donation, sperm donation, surrogacy, all in that kind of space.
Yeah.
2 on egg donation, 2 on surrogacy, and 1 on what's called the donor-conceived kids. Kids that find out through all different sorts of ways that they're here on this planet because of donor sperm, often anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right about the time that the Roe v. Wade overturning or the Dobbs overturning of the Supreme Court case broke, and that was right at the beginning of summer, and Twitter promised a reboot of 2020 with we're going to overthrow the government now. That didn't come to light for one reason or another, but right about the same time, this photo surfaced of this gay couple, these 2 gay men with this woman, this pregnant woman kind of out of focus behind them. Yeah. And she was dressed in red. And it was just a very startling contrast between these 2 kind of cultures. While the pro-abortion or the pro-choice side was up in arms and wearing these red dresses with these cowls, the surrogacy picture surfaced that was this woman basically chained. Handmaid. Yeah, this handmaiden. Like,
yeah, I posted that meme everywhere and put the little bonnet on her and put all the little, blessed be, fruit of the womb. I got in all kinds of trouble over that. But yeah, I went kind of crazy when Dave Rubin and his husband Dave announced that they each have hired their own surrogates, but the same egg donor, but their own sperm, so that they can have children. And, we had a lot of the social conservatives, congratulating them. And I can name names or I cannot name names, depending on how much trouble I want to cause myself.
Yeah. But is there a through line to your work then? I mean, we have discussed before that it's kind of around medical ethics, but from surrogacy or being a surrogate womb for hire to detransition, are there parallels, or the ROGD specifically?
Yeah. I mean, there's parallels in that a lot of the kids, when they're going to be put on the superhighway of gender affirmation, are offered fertility preservation, because you might want to save your eggs and your sperm for later when you've destroyed your fertility and you want to go. And then you become really a patient for life, because then you'll need to access fertility medicine in order to conceive. Lupron is a drug that people go crazy about because kids are put on that. Egg donors are put on Lupron. So
what does it do for the egg donor, the Lupron?
So with the donor, so what Lupron does, right? We hear people talk about medical castration, and Lupron, what it actually does is it kind of puts the ovaries to sleep. It puts the testicle, the sperm producers to sleep. It minimizes a male sex drive because it blocks everything. And what drives a lot of that, is the hormones. So they block it, right? In the egg donor, they're trying to synchronize her menstrual cycle with the woman or the couple who, like the Dave Rubin couple that bought the eggs, because they're trying to synchronize getting the eggs out of the body, making the embryos, and timing them to go in whoever's uterus they're going to go into. And that requires control, medical control, because 2 women menstruate at different times of the month. And if you've got one person providing eggs and one person's going to be the receiver of the eggs, you want to time those so that the womb is ready when the eggs and the embryos are ready. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So it's just a timing control thing. Same with children. We want to time or control or untime puberty. We want the prisoner and the male prisoner, to not have a sex drive or to have very little sex drive, so that he can't get an erection. He is kind of ambivalent. If a naked woman walks in front of him, he kind of goes, "Yeah, you look cold," instead of "you look hot." That makes sense.
Yeah, this might be a leap. So I'm just going to test the waters with this. But if we are more and more concerned with controlling the reproductive health of each other for various reasons, to solve various problems or to provide various solutions for fertility, let's say, or for puberty. What's to say that we're not going to take that same attitude to climate change and try to mess around with Mother Nature's fertility on a broad scale? I mean, do you see that the same attitude kind of translates?
I'm not a climate change expert. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if I just think broad picture, we always have to think about unintended consequences, right? So if we're going to control Mother Nature, I kind of want to say, well, Mother Nature always bats last, and sits on the throne of ha, 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 you arrogant, prideful people who thought you could control Mother Nature. So I think it's hubris or just naivete or ignorance to just think we can mess with things like this and that there won't be down the road things that we kind of went, oh, we didn't think about that. We have 1 million frozen embryos in the United States. Because we weren't thinking way back when we were just helping people who couldn't have babies. We weren't thinking. And now we have this huge debate, which will probably get really tangled up with the Dobbs decision, because is the frozen human embryo something we have to be pro-life worried about? Or can we just chuck it in the bin if the parents decide they don't want any more children and they don't come back to get those frozen embryos? Or can we give them to the scientific researcher who wants to do research, like in the whole embryonic stem cell debate way back when? Where did embryonic stem cells come from embryos? So I think the climate thing, it's just, we always try to think we're smarter than nature. I mean, there's a lot of evolutionary biologists that are not fans of assisted reproductive technology because in their mind, and I've tried to get Colin Wright to comment on this, and it's not his area, and I get that we all have our specialties. But, the evolutionary biologists who are in this space would be the ones who would say things like, Mother Nature doesn't want this person or this couple to procreate or reproduce. And this is nature's way of saying. And so what we're seeing now in children born of assisted reproduction is that because we've been doing it long enough, we have larger sample sizes, and these children have gotten older, we're seeing in the data that they have higher risks of certain types of cancer. They have higher rates of being obese. I mean, I look back at Dolly the sheep, that was the first cloned sheep. Dolly the sheep got very, very sick and very obese. She was just this fat old sheep. But those are the things that we think, oh, well, we're just helping this person have a baby. Isn't this great? And then down the road, we go, oh,
So I just have to tug this open. There's 1 million embryos. What classifies as an embryo? Like immediately
so you take
fertilized
an egg?
Okay.
Take an egg and you fertilize it with sperm. And once it's fertilized, people will say fertilized embryo and fertilized egg, and I cringe. I go, hit the tip jar. You cannot, because once the egg is fertilized, it's not a fertilized egg. It's an embryo. Or, if you want to get down into the nitty gritty of the whole development, blastocyte, zygote, embryo, fetus. But yeah, so an embryo is an egg that has been fertilized by a sperm.
And it's frozen. So it's a multicellular organism?
Yeah.
Or is it a single cell?
Early on. So it's usually at the four cell, maybe 8 cell stage.
Wow.
When they freeze them.
Okay.
And sometimes before they freeze them, they'll test them, right? Because they want to, if the couple wants a girl or a boy or not a Down syndrome baby, or, so they do what's called pre-implantation genetic testing. Not prenatal, because prenatal, is when they go in when you're pregnant and do like amniocentesis and test the baby. But pre-implantation genetic testing diagnosis, it can be often done before and then they go, oh, it's good. It's what we want. Put it in the freezer because we don't need 60 of them right now. We'll put them in the freezer.
And how do they take a sample of DNA from 4 cells or a clump of cells?
They just go in and take one. They just take a sample. So that's another unknown. What does it do in the early stages of human development to take something that's in my mind, is kind of necessary and important.
It's like a quarter or an eighth of the entire.
But when we get back to the studies that are coming out of children that are born and we're seeing problems, we have to go, is it something to do with the technique? Or is it something to do with a couple that otherwise wouldn't have been able to reproduce in nature because of some defect in their own fertility that we've bypassed? We found a workaround around. Can you work around a workaround?
Well, I mean, it's on a windy path, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so I see similars in the whole, especially in children and young adults, this doing things that we think are helping, not only, and many of us know that we are harming. We know that there's going to be ill health, casualties sooner versus later. But then there's also the gross ignorance of what seems to be, the medical establishment, American Academy of Pediatrics, Pediatric Endocrine Society, those kinds of groups that ought to know better, that are just thinking that they are helping these young people that have this gender dysphoria.
Mm-hmm. And so in your own dives into this topic, where have you found the fountainhead, or where does it begin for you with regard to the medical establishment going in this direction and going so hard?
Yeah, I'm asked that question a lot because I did work in clinical nursing for 20 years. So I was on the inside for a long time. And I think about when because I'm quite a bit older than you, I think of the olden days when I was a brand new young nurse and, we still had high regard for physicians, which got us into trouble. So we had a big swing back. It used to be doctor knows best. You didn't question, you just do whatever the doctor tells you. There was a lot of paternalism in medicine where we just tell people what to do. We don't listen to them. We didn't have any need for a bedside manner. I think there still is that sort of God complex in medicine. We come in to save the day. Here we come and we save lives. So there's some of that's legitimate. But I think probably the biggest shift, two things, is they stopped requiring medical ethics in medical school. Most of the time, if medical programs, school programs have medical ethics classes, it's an elective, which part of me says today is probably okay because if you have a medical ethics teacher who is woke. Do we really want them teaching medical ethics versus somebody who really understands medical ethics? The other shift is we move from, medicine being really a profession to a service providing industry. When I left nursing, we had clients and customers, and we were service providers, healthcare providers versus patients, doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals. So we moved to a service away from just do whatever your doctor says to doctor does whatever I tell him to do.
And that coincides with the doctor following the experts. So the doctor is no longer an authority. The authority is outsourced to the bureaucracy, the so-called experts, and to the patient, you think? Is the doctor just kind of this vector of...
Yeah, I think that's the third leg on the stool. Like when I was in graduate school getting my master's in bioethics, it used to be medical ethics, and then it became bioethics. So it was ethics by committee. So when I was a nurse, because I did pediatrics, and we often would have ethics consults on difficult cases that were, just messy for various reasons, or a really ill child, the committee would be everything from the hospital administrators, because these are financial decisions, right? Do we let this person stay on a ventilator for 6 months? Who's going to pay for it? It's the hospital, We had lawyers that were now part of the ethics consult, as well as doctors and nurses and therapists and counselors and members of the patient's family or the patient themselves that they could participate. So it moved from a model of ethics mostly driven by the doctor would disorder something, this is what we're going to do or not do, to ethics by committee, which gets back to the point of who do you really trust when ethics is now given to a committee where the committee might not share your values. We don't have a shared sense of values anymore. of what's good, virtuous, and lovely, and right, and honorable.
And accountability is also distributed into the institution, right? Basically going from suing the doctor to suing the organization, right? If something
I would
goes wrong.
think, in the clinical setting, I mean, certainly there's a lot of patients that are outpatient that are not in a hospital, that are just being treated at home and within, their personal physician network. But yeah, certainly and more so, for me where I work, because I almost solely worked in big university teaching hospitals. But that was clearly the case.
And okay, another wide question.
Yeah.
Can the way in which gender care, let's say, as neutral as possible, gender care has kind of just captured so much of the institution and has become, they've leaned into it so hard. Can that show us something about the institutional degeneracy of the United States medical field? Could it be the case that gender, whatever's happening in the realm of gender, is showing how weak the structure is to making the right decision, to changing the minds, to not going in one direction or another?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm 100% understanding what you're asking me. But to be fair, we've seen this creep into sort of all areas of institutional life. I mean, it's in the academic institutions. So the academy has been captured. Certainly big business. My husband works for a big company, and I'm just outraged that they've invited a trans woman to speak at a big event, on International Women's Day. So it's certainly creeped into, business. It's in the arts, it's in the media, it's being taught in law schools. There's a whole field now of reproductive justice law, which has nothing to do with justice. It has to do with exploiting women for their reproductive bodies, in my mind. So, I don't want to, but I also want to hold medicine to a different account, because they are the gatekeepers for our health, right? They are the gatekeepers for who lives, who dies, what kind of treatment we get, so they have, I do think, and I got into a little discussion, sort of a disagreement the other night, and this is not my own analogy, and you could play, here's a thought experiment. Imagine you're on an airplane and you're just digging this movie and you're loving it and you're so excited and you're looking at your watch because the plane's about to land and you're hoping you get to finish the movie before they land the plane, and you don't get to see the end of the movie. And the flight attendant gets on the phone and the overhead and says, "Hey, we've got an accountant who's got to give a big presentation and they're having trouble with their Excel spreadsheet. Is there anybody on the plane that could help them?" And you're the accountant and you're like, "No, I'm finishing my movie." That guy could just... on the other hand, if they get on the thing and they say, "Hey, we've got somebody who looks like they're having a heart attack. Is there anybody on the plane that has any expertise that could come to their rescue?" You would not sit in your chair and finish your movie. Whether you're a nurse or a doctor or a fireman or a paramedic, you would feel a sense of duty and obligation. So in that analogy, I hold medicine, or the whole medical profession, nurses too, clinical therapists, to a different account than I would hold, IBM or Target.
Yeah, I guess the real life consequences, and ergo the power and therefore the responsibility of the medical profession, is on a different level than these other things. But like you intimated or suggested, it might flow from the academy. It might be the academy that's pushing it into all these other realms, right? Because that's the academy is the ultimate one who stamps everybody's certificate. And again, they're so far removed from where the rubber meets the road, and that's why your work, what you're doing, is so important, because you're trying to establish some sort of skin in the game, or showing the outcomes of this institutional abstract ideas, and then all these different bureaucracies and all this stuff coming down and impacting young women, impacting young men.
I'm trying, Double B, I'm trying.
Yeah. What is the likelihood that this method, the method that you're doing with your documentaries and that I've done with my interviews, has an impact? Can we, like, what do you imagine the impact that our product can have eventually?
Yeah. And these are things that are still sort of nebulous and hard to get, tangibles on. But there's many times that I don't really care what the law says, because people can still do whatever they want. If I don't want to be a surrogate and I don't want to sell my eggs because I've learned that this is dangerous and harmful to me, and even though the law says I can do it, I'm not going to do it. I can smoke, but I'm not going to smoke. So part of it is this is a mass educational. Part of it's to be able to go to your doctor and be much more informed. Hey, I watched this movie last week, and you're telling me that my child has gender dysphoria, and you're suggesting X, Y, and Z. I don't think we're going to do that, doctor. I think we're just going to pump the brakes. We're going to, get Johnny or little Susie some counseling or some therapy, or we're just going to let her or him play with dolls and trucks, whatever, And so part of it's just that, and let the lawmakers just do crazy things and stupid things. Part of it's what we're seeing now, just being unfolding, with Vanderbilt, just like yesterday, all their, Matt Walsh has uncovered, all kinds of gems of a public meeting forum where they're just saying all this trends and gobbledygook, and if you're conservative or you're religious or if you're this or that, you need to just go to hell. These are my words. We've seen what's everybody being sort of brought up to speed with the new release of the WPATH guidelines and what the new. So part of it, and you've been very influential in educating me, and I've been sort of an interloper on your site and watching and learning from what you've done. And we're all doing that. There's people that are just silently watching and learning. Yeah, okay. I had somebody today that just reached out to me because our new film is on Vimeo, and she said, I want to give a gift to 10 people of your new film. How can I do that? I had a major university yesterday reach out to me, the acquisition librarian, said, we would like to buy university library rights to your film so we can put it in our catalog for our students to watch and our teachers to use in classes. I'm like, right on. These are the kind of things that, I can't, if somebody quoted me on, how do you know you're making a difference? I kind of go, well, I am. I meet women all the time that go, when I was in college, I watched Eggsploitation, and I had the forms on my bed. I was about ready to become an egg donor. And I went, whoa, now those are all, everybody would say, oh, that's just anecdotal. That's just narrative. Those are just stories. It's all going to come together in one big happy,
Well, I know it's a cliche by design, but the plural of anecdote is data. So eventually you get your sample size, eventually you get your impact.
And I did publish, along with my colleagues, our surrogacy data, which is now in peer-reviewed journal, where we took 96 gestational surrogates in America through our IRB, internal review board. So it means it met all the ethics smell tests to be a legitimate study that we could go take people through. And you know what we found? High-risk pregnancies, high rates of cesarean section, much higher rates in postpartum depression in the surrogate mother than when she gave birth to her own children. So we need both. As far as, the ammo. But yeah, you're right. Anecdotes add up and add up and add up. I mean, why did we finally do the research on smoking? I think it was, I'd have to go back and count again. I think it was 3 or 4 Marlboro men that did the Marlboro men commercials, died of lung cancer. They just find a new rugged looking guy and put him in that suede coat and smoke the Marlboros. But, because those were anecdotal evidences that, physicians were seeing. Why are all these people that smoke coming in with these lung problems?
Yeah, there keeps on popping up on my Twitter feed, interesting data around myocarditis.
Yeah, myocarditis.
And the sudden explosion of it, and how the data is not really being discussed and it's not being entered. But it's just anecdotal from my point of view. I don't have the power or like the backing.
This as it relates to the COVID, the vaccination?
The vaccine. It just seems like there's this correlation, this great uptick and stuff. And also just with regard to the lockdowns and the impacts that the lockdowns have had on children, specifically on rates of depression, on cancer rates because of not being checked up. One wonders if the institution, if it's in the institution's favor to confront that, because those are institutional decisions, right?
Yeah. And that gets back to your earlier point about, adjusting Mother Nature. We had no idea what the unintended consequences would be on such a large scale global lockdown. There's one thing if I'm just nasty to the people in my house and they grow up and become nasty people because they were raised by a nasty person. It is another thing when you do things to people on a massive scale that you can't even begin to calculate the enormity or I live in California, the Geiger counter, the earthquake measurement. I think the world is going to shake when we look at some of the aftermath of what we're doing with the massive lockdowns, with the transing of children, with the Wild West of fertility medicine. Mother Nature is gonna smack us down.
Yeah,
I love Mother Nature. She's a scrappy fighter like me.
When was your first love affair with her? Like, did you do a lot of hiking?
With Mother Nature?
12 or yeah.
My first love affair with Mother Nature.
Yeah, when did you discover her beneficent and maleficent powers?
I think mostly in the last 2 decades of the work I've been doing, when I see so much of the hubris, especially in science, that we're going to solve all these things. I mean, I think wasn't it Nixon that was going to fight the war on cancer? And we're still fighting the war on cancer. But that wasn't. And then we were going to fight the war on hunger and the war on poverty. We're always fighting these wars, but we never seem to win them. We still have hungry people and poor people and people dying of cancer. Yeah. That's again, Mother Nature who's saying, no, I'm going to decide when these wars are won or when you all just kind of.
I was reading an article earlier today. I can't remember the author's name, but he was talking about the liberal society has basically been eroded. And the way that it's been eroded is that we're always in a state of emergency, right? So a liberal government allows for maximum freedom and minimal government. But in cases of emergency, then that liberalism is set aside in order for something to be done, like whether it's a war or a national emergency on some level. And you see that the rhetoric of war has just escalated. We've had war after war after war. And what that's allowed the state to do itself is to maintain an indefinite period of emergency and maintain all these powers over. I think Jay Inslee, my governor, is still has emergency powers for the COVID thing. I don't know if Gavin Newsom.
Yes, he does. He won't release them.
Yeah. Why would they? Why would they?
Got the keys to the kingdom. I'm not giving them back.
No.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it is a state of emergency. It's a state of keeping us afraid. It's a state of always having a crisis. What's the crisis of today? What's the crisis? And on one hand, it does put us constantly always in this panic mode of fighting. They're going to take away, or it also makes us ambivalent, because it's just like, oh yeah, what's the new, so I worry that we just get weary of, this constant state of being angry, agitated, worried, afraid. Soon you just kind of go, fuck it. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's fine. Do you want me to edit that out? Is that bad? Does that besmirch your reputation, the F word?
No. Okay. I just know some people might not like that. I'm sorry. For those people, I'm sorry, but
So in approaching these really intense issues, detransition, transition, medical transition, surrogacy, I guess it would be fair to say the violence against women, through fertility medicine, or as they call it, reproductive justice. How do you keep from being in a constant state of agitation? Where's your bedrock? Where's your balance? And does that manifest in you being active towards this, running toward the problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, based on my years of working in nursing. I was always a strong patient advocate. Working in pediatric nursing, I was even, you're even a more of an advocate. Because you have to deal with, parents who have to be informed and brought up to speed so they can advocate on behalf of their children. I have a strong sense of justice, especially in the responsibility that medicine has to, first do no harm. So those are the things that just motivate me. I can't imagine that I would, even when I'm the old lady in the nursing home, that I wouldn't be caring about these kinds of things. So yeah, that, and I do get discouraged, but it's usually pretty rare. And my husband, when you live with people that really know you after a while, he'll just usually say something like, "You just need a good night's sleep." And then I do. I get a good night's sleep and I wake up going, okay, I'm not going to quit, because today I'm not doing this anymore. You can take this job and shove it, or I'll say, let's go out for dinner tonight. I'm like, yeah. I don't want to. I'm too tired. No, let's go out today. Oh, I'm so glad you made me go out to dinner tonight. I got on my bike this morning. I hadn't been on my bike for 2 weeks. I just got back from New Zealand. The jet lag crushed me, and it crushed me coming back from New Zealand. And literally, we're finishing the ending of the new movie when I'm in New Zealand, and so I woke up this morning and went, oh, I got such a busy day, and I'm going to be on Benjamin's show, which means I got to do my hair and my makeup. I'm like, no, I need to get on my bike. And by golly, 35 minutes later, I was like, I am so glad I got on my bike, and I feel like look at me, I'm so happy.
Yeah, chipper.
I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit.
Basic self-care keeps you in the fight.
Yeah. Good sleep, good dinner, get some exercise.
So in California, did they go through with the law where it's like a sanctuary state for trans youth now? They proposed a law.
Sitting on his desk, okay. The big man's desk to be signed, has not yet been signed into law. So minors across the United States, maybe even from other countries, who knows, can come to California and get the gender care that they desire. And California will give them sanction, will protect them from their parents, I suppose, and then hook them up with doctors. Are doctors now required to give gender-affirming medicine, which is a euphemism if I ever heard one, is that kind of in law too, where all doctors are the state medical? Yeah. Now, and I know you had Erin Friday on your show not too long ago, and she's amazing. I mean, what she's been able to do in the state, I have just props to her. But my understanding is, a child with, a divorced or separated parent could come with a parent. A child that has two parents that is in a state that doesn't allow this could come here. A child could come here and get emancipated. If they just run away from home and they just show up in California and, knock on social services door, or, a foster care home or something, could become emancipated. I do not believe that. So for example, if you went to a physician and he did not believe in gender affirmation care, I don't think he will be forced. I don't have, if I was an OBGYN doctor, for example, and somebody came to me and said, I want to do surrogacy. I could say I'm a conscientious objector. You'll have to find somebody else. I think doctors can still do that in the state of California. So if they are not on the cheer train for gender affirmation therapy, they could not be forced to provide those services, but the state would be forced to receive these children and offer them these services. And my understanding is the taxpayers would be on the hook for paying for this. I mean, if you're an emancipated youth, you don't have money for gender affirmation care. So yeah, it's on his desk, and we're all just hoping that I was told, and I don't know if this is true, I was told he has like 900 bills on his desk. So I'm hoping it's at the bottom of the pile, and that by the time he gets to it, people like Erin Friday and all the parents in the state of California, I understand there's something being planned around the Oh, I shouldn't say that. Never mind. I won't say that.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll leave that juicy tidbit for another episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you looked into this, how the state is paying for these gender affirming cares? Because I know that the foster system is kind of allowing for it, or not discouraging it, let's say.
Yeah, I was doing a poke around the other day because I'm in the Bay Area. So I think it's called the San Francisco Healthcare Plan, which is Medi-Cal. So if you're a trans person in the city of San Francisco, or, and you want affirmation therapies or surgeries, it's all part of that, which is a state funded, I don't think they're going to loop, Blue Cross Blue Shield into that and make them have to pay for, uninsured people. I think it will be through the state healthcare. And there's quite a few different healthcare plans. But from my reading the other day, the San Francisco plan is, one of the most popular and the biggest ones that people in the city use and companies use to provide, for indigent people or low income people or uninsured people.
And are there any similar sorts of state-funded medical interventions that turned out to be needless down the road? I guess what comes to mind, and I don't know too much about it, would be mental health care, lobotomies, electroshock therapy being used by the state to take care of certain problems. But
I'm trying to think of things that are offered like that. I mean, we've talked about that, it's certainly unnecessary to offer a young girl double mastectomies on healthy breasts. Nothing is coming to mind if there is something. I was just reading a piece that Joe Bartosh sent me this morning on providing treatment for short kids, so that you don't have short stature. We need to put these kids on growth hormones, which I think is totally unnecessary. But as far as being mandated and required and paid for with taxpayer money, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. I just wonder if in the case of transition, if there will be reparations down the line, if
we already do that for the people that were involuntarily sterilized in the state of California. I mean, California was one of the biggest abusers in the early 1900s with, mass involuntary sterilization. And I think we have, what
was the
$7.5 million reparation fund that, sorry, I just had a pop up.
That's fine.
7.5 million is my understanding that California is doling out to people that are still alive. Obviously, a lot of these people that were involuntarily sterilized have long, died and gone away and didn't get their reparations. But I said that I was on a Zoom call with some lawmakers in California. I believe Aaron Friday was on that and a couple other people. And I just sort of challenged this young woman who's a staffer for one of our lawmakers that, this will be another one of those moments in history where we will have to make reparations to people like, they grow up and go, oh, I can't have any children and I want children. And I was never told that I wouldn't be able to have children for doing this. I'm constantly a patient in need of mental health care. I was never told that, this would, ruin my life and my mental health. So.
And what was the populations that were targeted with the involuntary sterilization?
It was the usual that we love to target, low income. I mean, I reminded of the Buck versus Bell, Oliver Wendell Holmes ruling where he ruled against Carrie Buck, who was a low income, uneducated woman, and said 3 imbeciles is enough. So we're going to, force you to be sterilized so you can't have any more children. Certainly minorities, disabled people. Women were obviously heavily targeted because they were the ones that could get pregnant and produce these imbeciles.
Yeah.
Obviously, they got pregnant with the help of a man, but
yeah. So you're prisoners. Yeah. For a second, I thought you said sinners, and I wonder who does California consider a sinner nowadays?
No, I thought you said senators. They're sinners and senators.
I think they're.
When I was a little girl, before we moved to California, I'm a Southerner. My grandmothers are Southerners. My grandmothers used to call that Sin City. That's Sin City out there. Grandma, I'm moving to Sin City. Here I am.
So your film, what's the essence of it? I watched it. Beautiful film. I know these young women,
Yes.
very evocative. You feel very close to them after this time. What was the motivation, and how did you end up artistically constructing it?
Yeah. Well, the motivation was the transmission film, What's the Rush? And when we released that film, and again, we released it during COVID, so we couldn't do any live theater screenings like we did Monday night. We had a live theater screening. But, you get a lot of feedback and vibe back from people that have watched it, even though it went straight online for viewing. And, two things was people really connected with the parents in transmission. Their hearts ached for these parents that, knew their kids better than anybody else. And here they were facing this child saying, I'm really not that anymore, I'm this. And the lack of support they got, whether it was from teachers or from medical professionals or from even within their own family, that they just felt isolated and, this burden on their heart for their child. And the second thing was audiences really connected with the voices of the detransitioners, because we included two detransers in that film. Hachi, have you had Hachi on your show?
No, an older.
Do you know who Hachi is?
I don't know.
No, it's
the
okay.
older person in the film?
Yes. So he's a man who lived presented as a woman for a long time, and then another woman who was to male transitioner, but the audience is really connected with those firsthand accounts, because I don't think you hear that. I mean, that's the story that's silenced in the media, especially the mainstream media. They don't want to tell the unhappy stories. It's like all the hookers are happy hookers. There's no sex workers that are not happy with being sex workers. And so we quickly just said, let's make this a shorter film. It's about 42 minutes runtime. And let's just do a deep dive into the voices of the detransitioners. And we also saw what happened on 60 Minutes when Leslie Stahl dared to include the voices of the detransition. How dare you? We thought, we're onto something here. And then it was a stylistic decision just to do a deep dive into women. Part of that's because we do a lot of work in vulnerable women that have been exploited, whether it be through egg surrogacy, that kind of space. Part of it's because of just sort of the whole rapid onset social contagion that seems to be really affecting women. When you look at how many mastectomies are being performed in young people, that's just, so we thought, you can't do everything in a film. Our film is not there's a couple more films I hear are coming out soon and a little after, so there will be more films, but we just said, we're just going to make a film and tell, the story of these women. Mm-hmm. And then we did include Kelly J. Keene and Libby Emmons and Natasha Chart, because we'd hosted an event in New York City around the Commission on the Status of Women, which is a big annual global event at the UN. Mm. And that event was called How Gender Equality, in quotes, Cheats Women and Girls. And on that panel, I spoke, as well as Beth Stelzer, who's with Save Women's Sports. But we were able to pick some of the content from that event just to sort of embellish and expand on the voices of Kat and Grace and Helena. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And how's the response been so far? It was released like 5 days ago, around the 17th?
No, just Monday.
Oh, okay.
2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So Monday night was the premiere at the local theater. We rented a local theater. People were surprised. How did you get a theater to rent and let you show that movie there? I'm like, well, I just asked and gave them money. So that was really fun. And, Erin Friday was in the audience. So she participated in the discussion after the film. And then Kat was there. And so she participated in the discussion after the film. And we had no protesters. So we didn't release the venue address until the morning of the event. We just told people the city so that it could at least sort of know their drive time. Mm-hmm. How long does it take me to get to that city? And we expected to have protesters, but we didn't. And we even had some media come with cameras and, interviews, and that was kind of fun. And the audience overwhelmingly just loved the film. I mean, a lot of people cry. My husband watched it and he cried. And I kept looking at him going, are you crying? You're crying, you're crying. Because it is sad. But, it's also hopeful. And I think because you gave me an early blurb, I think you sort of said something about the sadness or the harms, but also the hopefulness. So it leaves audience with, this was sad what happened, this is wrong what happened, but I'm glad that these women have survived. That they've made it through this storm, and they've come out on the other side. And so I hope that will be a hopeful message for other people, that, especially young people that are in this space, either gender questioning, gender confused, have friends, I hope it will help them to listen to basically their contemporaries. I mean, I can talk to people all day long, but they're like, well, you're like my mom. My mom says that too.
Okay, boomer. Yeah.
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 So, yeah.
It's a very accessible film, and I'm not a teenage girl, so I don't know that market, but I can see them being able to.
I identify as a teenage girl.
Do you? Yeah. Is that your identity now? That's a troublesome identity. Is your husband forced to go along with that?
Yeah.
Do with all your So, speaking business-wise, what do you do now that it's done and it's out there? I guess you do these pressers like we're doing right now, but what is your concentration now with the film? And then with your company as a whole, where do you think you're going to be guided next? Or do you have an inkling of what's next?
Yeah, well, right now, I mean, it took us 7 months to make this film, which is a whirlwind. I mean, that is a very short, from when we did the first interview to when we released it Monday night, is 7 months. So I like, it's kind of like when I'm pregnant and I have a baby and it takes me 9 months to get out of shape. I always give myself 9 months to get back into shape. So it took me 7 months, and my team. It wasn't just me, to make this film. So I like to put all my energy into it for 7 months ish. So we're already scheduling other theater screenings.
Okay.
We've already been approached by other people that want to, bring the film, rent a movie house and do a screening. And depending on where they are geographically, find maybe local detransition people, to participate in some kind of a talk back. So we'll spend a lot of energy on that. We're going to spend a lot of energy getting more and more university libraries to buy this film. Like we just landed in our lap yesterday and we went, oh, the libraries are on to us. This would be a great way for us to spend some energy into maybe some advertisement, buying some lists to acquisition libraries, in universities. And yeah, so just pushing it. I've got lots of media interviews scheduling. Like this morning, I think 4 different media people asked for a private link so they could watch it, write a review, whatever. And yeah, so we'll just spend a lot. Now, down the road, I don't see us getting out of the filmmaking space. One, because we just love it. It's fun. It's work. It's hard work, but it's a lot of fun. It's brain power, but it's the creative. So I love the mix. It's not just thinking like, when you're doing research and data and writing. And we did sign a book deal. So we've already in contract to turn Detransition Diaries into a book.
Oh, wow.
And we have to deliver a manuscript like 2 weeks before Christmas.
Oh. So
Callie Fell, who co-produced and co-wrote the script with me, she and I will be busy writing a book. And of course that will be much bigger because it's not a 40-minute film, it's a book. So it's going to have more chapters. How did we get here? What's the history? Where did medicine go wrong? As well as including the stories. And we'll add a few more stories that we weren't able to add on camera. So we're reaching out to a couple of detransition women right now to see if they would give permission for us to include their stories in the book. And if you've ever written a book before, it's a lot of work. So I told Callie yesterday we should have a goal to write 5,000 words a week. 5,000 words a week, 5,000 words a week.
Yeah.
And we have the churn, write it, read it, edit, write it, read it, edit.
Yeah. That's the only way to get a book done is to write the book.
Yeah. And you have it works for me. I have to give myself a carrot or a goal. I will say to myself when I'm at my desk, I can't go to the kitchen and get a snack until I write 500 words. I really want a snack. I just made cookies. I want a cookie. Nope, I got to write 500 words. Then I go get my cookie.
So between the writing of the book and the next 7 months, you expect to be doing a tour with this across America, Canada. Where do you expect to be going?
You know, we expect to be going where we're invited, because we can't just show up. We just can't show up and go, we're here, y'all come. You know, we need boots on the ground. We need people on the ground that know people, you know, so we're already in discussion with people at Princeton University to show the film there, which would be wonderful. But they're attached, they're there, so they know the movie house. They can go into contract. They can, you know, rally people to come and buy tickets and come and watch the movie. So we're so small, and we don't have the manpower to just start, you know, doing all that. But we just make ourselves available. And whether it takes on you know, when I look at the Vimeo data, and I'm a data junkie, I think it's already sold into 12 countries online. So, you know, because it's digital, so anybody can buy it. So we've sold into South Korea, you know, of course, New Zealand, because I was just in New Zealand and promoting the film. We've sold into France and United Kingdom and Canada and Germany, and, you know, on and on and on. So, and then, as you know, some people, luckily we haven't, because we are monetizing this film. We're asking people to pay $5.99 on Vimeo. When we released Transmission, it went straight for free viewing on our YouTube channel, but that was because we had a very generous donor, and that was the donor's request, was to not have any barriers, and just, you know, so we were fully funded, just made the film and just made it available. That was not the case for this film, and we kind of had to bootstrap it along the way. Like the local ROGD parent group out here was very helpful in raising the funds to bring Helena to do that whole interview and pay the cost of that. So we'll probably release it onto YouTube after we recover some of our budget. So I don't want people to think we're just trying to get rich on this. You know, we're just trying to keep the boat afloat. You know?
Yeah, no, the Detrans grift, it's gonna make somebody a lot of money eventually, but not you, not yet. Do you have any contracts with the Daily Wire? Oh, yeah, don't answer that question coming up. I guess you and Matt Walsh, do you guys, I
can't get him to answer my calls.
Oh, okay. So he's not even a competitor.
I knock on the doors all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
There's so many people that don't take my calls, Benjamin.
I always take your call. Well, your DMs, to be specific. So if somebody wants to get in contact with you, does the film have its own website right now, or is it just on Vimeo?
We do have on our cbc-network.org, we have a whole drop down on the film. You know, it has the press release. It has all the glowing endorsements from people like you. It has the links to how to see it on Vimeo. And then what was the other question you asked me?
How would people? Yeah,
find me on Twitter.
Okay,
I'm just at Jennifer Lahl.
Okay. And so it is possible for people to gift viewings to other people. You have that. You're setting up that infrastructure.
Yeah, because Vimeo allows you to create a bunch of just private codes and links. And so, like the person this morning that wanted 10, we just created 10 codes. And you know, she just bought the 10 codes, and then she'll just be responsible for giving them to whoever she wants. That's how we reach out to the media. You know, then they say, I want a, you know, private access code. We just send them a Vimeo link that is tied to a unique code. So
people can.
And we already have people in Italy that want to translate the film.
Oh, well, there we
in
go.
2 days. You know what they do is we send them the Word document script, and then they translate it into Italian, and then you can reload and upload the subtitles.
So to put the word out, you have a film, so it'll be linked in the description, but you're also looking for translators, people who want to host you for a showing.
Oh, sure.
So, and viewers, and just to get the word out. Again, it is a beautiful film, and I don't know Kat, but I know Helena and Grace pretty well. And you really give them a chance to just be themselves and speak to their experience. It's not really.
Love them all. People ask me all the time in the making of the film, do you have a favorite? I'm like, I just love them all. Every time, it's not a movie that I've gotten tired of. When you make movies, at one point you get sick of just watching it again and again and again. When the editor keeps sending you another version, you're like, fast forward, you know. And I mean, I just sit there and go, I just love these women to death. Just love them to death. Yeah.
Well, Jennifer, you're a busy, busy woman. You're constantly creating content, which is just very admirable from my point
You
of view.
do that all day long. That's your, your channel's content creator.
We just got to churn. We just got to be a part of the churn.
Yeah.
So it's great to be able to be on the same side as you on this particular issue, but also to learn from you and to actually constellate this one issue. I'm really more and more concerned as I just develop as somebody who's constantly immersed in politics about the systemic issue or the institutional issue. And you're able to tie those things together. And I think that is something that also needs to always be kind of discussed, even if it's not the center of any given issue. It's that this is being done, this transition thing, surrogacy thing, this is being done by a society. It's part of a cultural thing. It's got a legal framework, it's got a medical framework, and it's got an ethical aspect to it that's kind of overlooked. And reawakening the ethics of the institution is one way that we might be able to get out of certain messes that we've gotten into.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm just, like I said, I'm a huge admirer of your work, and I've learned a lot from what you've done. So we're all in this together, doing our part.
Woo-hoo. And so you are going to do another bike ride later on today, or are you just going to eat cookies and write? What's on your plate now?
I don't know. I think maybe I'll take a nap.
Oh.
New Zealand jet lag. Nap.
Do you ever get over it, or is it just chronic now, like going off to Vietnam?
No, I felt like I'm finally over it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I bent that corner, turned that corner, bent that curve. I turned the corner.
Glad to have you back.
Beautiful country, though. I'd never been before. Beautiful country, wonderful people.
Yeah.
I zip-lined in a rainforest.
Whoa.
So not me.
Wait, with like sloths? What's the national? No, they have kiwis. They have these little kind of birds, right? Like little funky creatures.
So many birds.
Yeah.
But yeah, the kiwis on the endangered species list. So we didn't see any of them in the rainforest.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fun.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.